Mark with Rio Grande, and I'm going to show you some tips that you might take to set up your soldering bench at home. Just know that everybody does this a little bit differently, and these are just tips that we do here at Rio Grande to kind of make our soldering go a little bit easier. We like to start off with putting our torch on our non-dominant hand. I'm right-handed, so I keep my torch on the left-hand side. And the reason for this is I don't need a whole lot of precision control when I'm doing soldering, but if I come in here with a pick or have to do something with tweezers, I'm going to need that precision. So I keep all my precision tools on my right hand side. Now if at home you find that you can't do that, like at my house I have to put mine on the right hand side, you can always come across and put it in your left hand. It takes a little bit of getting used to, but it does work out a lot better. Also on the left hand side, I also put my third hand. This way I can put my ring or something in here like that and it stays out of the way. One thing you should know about third hands is that they'll come with a tweezer like this, and it's straight up steel. And what happens when you're soldering is that this gets really hot. So you want to pick up a pair of cross-lock tweezers that have the thermal protection right here, so that when you go to release your piece that you're working on, you're not going to burn yourself. Here's another version of that. These happen to be titanium, and they work really well because they're nice lightweight, and the titanium won't solder to your piece accidentally or anything like that. And then you also have different size version here, a little bit smaller for smaller jump rings and things like that. So I keep all my tweezers for the third hand on the left hand side where that is, and then I'll have everything on my right hand side that I use to manipulate the pieces that I'm working with, adding solder, things like that. I also have my Flux Jar, so it's really easy to come in, grab some flux, and apply it where I need to. I highly suggest that you get a variety of different tweezers for holding and grabbing things. So I always have a bunch of tweezers on my right hand side. Some are small precision, others are larger. So that way, when it's done soldering, I can grab it and then put it in the water. And I can never find the one I'm looking for, so I always have like 2 or 3 of the same kind that I like to use. And that way there's always one handy. So let's take a little minute and talk about the different soldering boards that we can use. And we'll do this in a layer. This bottom layer is a silcore tile. It's very hard, but the coolest thing about this is it has these little rubber feet, okay? You can solder on this, but for the most part, what we like to do is use a big tile as protection for our work surface. A lot of times when you're soldering, things can roll off. If you're soldering on here, they can bounce off and roll onto the bench. So if you have a tile that protects your bench, that works really, really well. There's a lot of different types of these. One is like a lazy Susan, so you can spin your item. And there again, you can solder on these silcore tiles if you need to. Otherwise, we always put like another soldering block on top. That works really, really well. So let's talk about the different soldering blocks real quick. This is a compressed charcoal block. One of the smaller ones, they do come in a much bigger size. It's one of my favorite ones. One of the nice things about it is when the surface gets pretty gunked up, you can take it and sand it onto some sandpaper or against another brick and get a whole new surface. And they last a really long time. Another option for charcoal is a standard soft charcoal block. And these deteriorate pretty quickly. They don't last a very long time at all. You'll find that a lot of people will wrap theirs with a binding wire to kind of keep them intact. But they have a really cool advantage in that you can actually take pins and insert them and line up your pieces for soldering, things like that. Another type of soldering surface is the Soldering Board, kind of white, very hard. These are really great. I actually started with one of these when I was learning in school, and they last really, really long time. They're very, very tough. They really reflect the heat really well. Another version is this Honeycomb, which is a very popular, that a lot of people like. It's a really heat reflective ceramic, and neat thing here is that you can carve these up if you need to, using like a hacksaw or something, and make it smaller, or you can keep it larger. You can insert pins in the little hole, but you have to be very careful. A lot of times when I've done that in the past, I've actually cracked it and I've ended up with a bunch of smaller honeycomb boards. Here's another version of the Soldering Board. This one is a soft version, and here again too, you can put pins in there, and this lasts a really long time. It's very tough. It doesn't last quite as long as the harder version, but it will last a little bit longer probably than the soft charcoal block. So those are just different types. There's all different types of soldering boards that you can use. Highly recommend that you experiment with a few if you're just starting out, and see which ones you like to use. So just remember, everybody does this a little bit differently. Think about your space and the flow. When you're right in the middle of soldering, you got your tool right handy, and you can keep that going real nice. Well, I hope this helps, and if you have any questions, contact the experts at riogrande.com.